nanosecond later, they can convert your process into something in the range of the 60 nanosecond pace, which is broad compared to multipliers of 25. What the project that we're working on is essentially developing, as I mentioned earlier, these detectors, which are a type of photosensor that is extremely sensitive and is able to detect very low amount of light. And one of those is shown on the left. It's actually the size of a small stamp, or a quarter. It's about this big. And you can see it has 16 tiles on that. And these 16 tiles can be read out individually. But within each tile, what you don't see is something like 4,000 micropixels there. So all these are able to collect light. And you see some pins in the back of the detector. Those can be connected to special electronic circuits, and the information then can go into a computer and analyzed. These things are called multi-pixel photon counters, or sometimes they're called silicon photomultiplier arrays. And they have a lot of uses in nuclear and particle physics experiments. This is what they were developed for originally, but now they're finding applications in other sectors. For example, in the health sector, there's much interest in using them to actually get images of small animals or even humans, and also image plants. And one other new application that I'll also mention is about using them for personal radiation detection. So starting with the first area here, it's important to be able to image animals and humans to detect, for example, specific activities, or let's say growth of cancer cells, and be able to track them. All that's done by injecting a radioactive tracer either in the animal or the patient, and getting the appropriate scans. So what our group wants to do is work with researchers in fields like the medical sector, and develop what are the parameters of these different setups, what are the configurations, how we actually configure those detectors to make accurate imaging. And sometimes those end up combining with other techniques like MRI or CT scans. So you combine images from a number of these techniques and you form these hybrid images. So for these detectors, what is important is that they give very, very clean signals, free of any noise, and also very fast, because all that helps you get a really, really crisp image. So this is the area that we're actually going to work on to try improve the imaging. In the second area, personal radiation monitoring, here we're working with industry to develop the next generation of personal radiation monitors. The existing ones tend to be rather large, cumbersome, fragile, and they're not really easy to carry. They're typically shoebox size. You carry it with a handle. And now what we're trying to collaborate with is to make something that's really, really small that can clip onto the belt of a person, either a first responder or somebody working, for example, in the mines where there's a radiation environment. And the nice thing about those is they will have Bluetooth communication, so they'll be able to send information from the detector to the cell phone. And most people are very comfortable using cell phones, so these devices can essentially either work in alert mode, where if a first responder is entering somewhere where there's a threat that can be detected, or just simply monitoring. Here now what we want to do is develop the detector so that they can map out the spectrum of energies of the particles coming out through, so we can identify them and identify the threat. We're experimental nuclear and particle physicists. I wanted to mention this because sometimes in these presentations there are of course individuals and groups that have worked for many, many years in things that are applied and close to people where there are applications. But our mainstay research is purely academic. Matter of fact, we're involved in a Nobel caliber experiment in the United States, which is going to start running in 2 years. And that one tries to understand the nuclear glue that holds the universe together. So that's as academic as you can get, has nothing to do with applications, and it's pretty tricky to explain to the public. But in this case, we had a very good match. Thanks to the Fedoruk Institute, we were able to apply all the knowledge and the expertise we had gathered in detector development to something applied in 2 different areas. So just quickly how it works, there's essentially 4 steps. We typically use a crystal to convert these subatomic particles, which are naked to the eye. So we want to convert them into light typically. So a particle or radiation comes in, converts them to light in the crystal. In step 2, that light travels down to these multi-pixel devices, and then what happens in there, the light excites the structure of the devices, and we apply voltage across them, and charges move, and we detect the current, and we're able to digitize that and measure it. So These particular devices promise to be a lot more compact than what exists out in the market now. They'll have about a third of the size, and that's particularly attractive for first responders who already have usually a pretty crowded belt of equipment or other instruments hanging there. And the removing the actual, let's say, display from those devices and moving that to the cell phone to function is one of the reasons why you can make them so compact. The other thing is that, even with training, most people who are not in radiological control groups don't feel comfortable in handling, some of the standard equipment that exists. And rather, everybody pretty much, even older people like myself, are comfortable with smartphones. So that's the other deal. It's basically the comfort level. So this is sort of what we're offering, but one other particular aspect is that most of the existing devices, have difficulty in detecting neutrons, and those are present in some of those environments. And those are particularly difficult particles to detect. They have no charge, they're electrically neutral, so you have to convert them in something with charge or in lights to detect them. So this is where we're going to try to develop a detector that can also detect the neutrons.